Hello and welcome to today's live English lesson here on the AM Language YouTube channel. If this is your first time, please make sure you subscribe. Now, this past week, I've had some serious difficulty with the internet connection. Now, I did a lot to try and sort out the internet connection. And if what I have done still doesn't work, then I'm going to have to completely rethink of how I'm going to do the daily life lessons. I've actually bought my own little private little internet thing here, which is fully charged and it's right next to the laptop. So I'm the only one using this. So hopefully this means that this works well. You know what? I'm even going to turn the Wi-Fi off my phone. No, I'm not. But I'm not using my phone anyway at the moment. So hopefully that works. You can also see two little rings as well. And that's the reflection of this new light. And I think it's absolutely fine if I'm not. I think it's absolutely fine. I've got my guitar in the background over there. Now, this is absolutely fine. Hello, Irene F. Good afternoon. The only thing is that when I have my glasses on, you can then see the rings, which completely defeats the point. So I'm not going to use my glasses. And hopefully we can have a good lesson. In today's lesson, we are going to look. I'm going to move my guitar because I think I'm going to keep on hitting it. In today's lesson, we are going to look at too much, too many, but we're going to take the approach of how native speakers use them, because you're going to learn how to use them, and we're going to look at the grammar. So we will just make sure we understand the grammar. Now, there is a video that came out last Friday, part of our new series, Teacher Language Tips, where I've actually given a lesson on a short little video on too much and too many. But what I want to go into today is how a native speaker actually uses them. Now, there isn't a huge difference between the way you guys would learn how to use them and how a native uses them, but there are some differences, and it's more to do with the experience of language. Alida, good afternoon. Welcome to today's lesson. Now, I really hope that the internet connection is good. Like I was just saying at the beginning, I have my own internet connection today. No one else is using this. It's powered up to 4G, so it should work. It should work. It's been working for me since I got it this morning, but I know that YouTube, when streaming live on YouTube, more internet is used, more Wi-Fi. It uses up more Wi-Fi. So hopefully there are no problems with this. But yeah, I'm just going to look at how to use too much, too many from a native perspective. Now, you guys will know too much, too many in terms of the following, okay? So if you're using an uncountable noun, for example, you're going to use too much, for example, such as, oh, that's too much water. As a result, if we're going to use many, we're going to use countable nouns plus too many. Okay, so things like there are too many people here, for example. These are countable nouns that we're looking at there. Or there are too many Bottles of water. Notice how when you use, even though we've got an uncountable noun of water, we're always talking about the first word that comes after many or after much. In this case, bottles is a plural. It's a countable noun. Now, you do have some words that can be both countable and uncountable. They're not the majority of words, but you do have some. I think a common example would be something like food. For example, food is typically an uncountable noun. You would say, oh, that's too much food. But interestingly enough, it's not unusual to hear people say, there's an interesting range of foods, for example. But I would just like to say this, just because people use it as accountable doesn't mean it is. And I would strongly suggest that people don't use food as accountable. It really is meant to be an uncountable. Another example would be cheese. Cheese is an uncountable noun. Having said that, you might sometimes hear people say they have an interesting range of cheeses, for example. That technically is wrong. You should be saying they have an interesting range of cheese. So just because you might hear people, especially native speakers, use an uncountable noun, suddenly turn it into accountable, it doesn't make it accountable all of a sudden. It just means they're not using it correctly. Another example would be tea and coffee. Tea and coffee, typically speaking, are uncountable nouns. But if you go to a cafe, it's not uncommon to hear people say 3 teas, for example. That's wrong. It should be 3 cups of tea or 3 pots of tea. Same with coffee, 3 pots of coffee, 3 cups of coffee. But it's very common to hear people say 3 coffees, for example. So what you will learn in the classroom isn't going to be wrong. These are uncountable nouns. But native speakers tend to sort of play around with them a little bit. But now let's get on. Francesca, good afternoon. Welcome to today's lesson. But let's have a little look at what I'm really going to get at here. Now, first things first, much. And this is a common one, okay? Can you use it in a positive sense? The answer is yes. You could say, okay, in a positive sense, okay? You could say, for instance, oh, there's much to be said about that. You can say something like this, for example, there's a lot. Okay, this effectively means a lot. There's much to be said about that. The actual meaning of this could even be negative in a greater context, but you're saying that there's a lot and you can use it like that. We could also, as you can see here, we've actually linked it. We've used much in an interesting way here. We've linked it to be said. It's slightly interesting structure there. Now, would a native, here's a question for you. Would a native say this? Okay. I have much money. Technically, grammatically, you might think, oh, well, money is an uncountable. They've used much. Surely they can say this. I have much money. Would a native speaker say this? This is something that a lot of people who learn English might say. I have much money. But would a native speaker say this? Let me know what you think. Or would they say something different, such as, I have a lot of money. And usually this is where we would have to think of what would the native speaker say? Would they say, I have much money? Or would they say, I have a lot of money? Now, I know I'm going to come on to too much in a minute and too many, because that is also important. But I just want to have a little look at this. Again, for instance, I have much food. Or would we say I have plenty, meaning a lot of food? So what do you guys think? I have a lot of money. So Francesca, you're saying that the native speaker would say, I have a lot of money, instead of saying, I have much money. Do you think this is also the case for food? Do you think a native speaker would say, I have much food? Or do you think they would say, I have plenty of food, meaning I have a lot of food? Let me know. And let me know, guys, if you agree with Francesca over here. Francesca has said that the native speaker would use I have a lot of money instead of I have much money. There is a reason for this as well. Something we need to think about, which is how English has changed over time. So we are living in the 21st century. So we should think about in terms of how do native speakers use English today rather than how they used it in the 1800s, for example. Alida says that she agrees with Francesca. And yeah, the native way would, I have a lot of money, or I have plenty of food. The native today is not going to say, I have much money. I have much food. The native speaker today is not going to use much in this way. Instead, they're going to probably use it in a slightly different way. Let's have a little look at many, though, before we move on. What would the native say? Alejandro, good afternoon. Yes, I have plenty of food. That is exactly what the native would say. What about when it comes to many? Is it the same thing? I'm going to stick to this example first. What do you reckon? Would the native say there are many children who like this? Sorry, who like this? Let me just write that again. That's a mistake. That should be who, not to, who like this. So would we say there are many children who like this? There are a lot of children who like this. There are many banks to choose from. There are a lot of banks to choose from. Or would the native choose both? Would the native happily go with either? What do you guys think? Would the native use both, or would they choose to use a lot of instead of many? This is in the positive sense as we're looking at. Francesca says there are many children who like this. Okay, if you agree with Francesca that the answer is definitely many, let me know. If you think the answer is not, also let me know. And if you think the answer is in fact both, definitely let me know. Alejandro says there are many children. Okay, so far all of you are going with many. The answer is, though, and might surprise you, is there are many banks to choose from. Both. So this interesting change, this interesting difference is only something that happens with much. With many, you can use many a lot in the positive sense, no problem, as a native. But as a native, interesting enough, the only exception is with much. We don't seem to be as flexible with much as we are with many. So we now come on to how do natives usually use much? Well, the answer here is in the negative form. Too much. Now this is important because I've heard some people say, "Oh, I have too much water," and they were thinking it was positive, but in fact, it's negative. It's really important to remember. If you use too much, this is going to be negative. It's not going to be positive. And this is something, again, really important to know. The native uses too much as a negative, and we tend to use much in the negative most of the time. As a native speaker from England, I would say the majority of the time I would ever choose to use much is usually in the negative form. Not all the time, but I would say probably, and I'm just speaking for myself here, but 70% of the time that I use much, I think it's probably going to be in the negative form, such as, now, if you're in Malta, you might say this heat is too much, for example. So it's too hot, effectively. We're saying it's too hot. This is how a native speaker would probably use it. So there's a slight difference in this. Now, with many, yes, many is also going to be negative. And again, we're always going to use it in a negative way. So the next thing that we need to think about is trying to actually tell. It comes down to meaning, really. Okay, so let's have a little think about this. I'm now going to give you some sentences, and I'd like you to think of what which of these well, the title here is "What's the native way of doing this?" So I'm going to ask you to try and think of what is the native response. Okay, or what are the native responses? Okay, so let's start off. Which are the native responses? Actually, sentences. Let's go with sentences. It'll be easier. Okay. Hey. Now we're going to play around with much and many. So sometimes many and much will be the correct answer, but not every time. And sometimes they'll just be wrong. That's the other thing. Sometimes it will just be wrong. Sorry. Okay, I've introduced a new word as well at the bottom there, which I'll look at. So, what do you think we'll say? Which ones do you think are correct, and which ones do you think are the native way of saying it? So there's too much internet. The wife. So A, there's too much internet. B, there's much internet. Sorry. C, the Wi-Fi strength is good. D, there's so much food in this fridge. E, there's too much food in this fridge. Let me know. Does D and E have the same meaning? We'll think this is an extra question. Do D and E, do sentences D and E have the same meaning? That's an extra question. F, there's too many foods in this fridge. And then finally G, this fridge is stuffed with food. Stuffed, good word here, stuffed. To stuff, for example, means to pack a lot of things in something. So to say that this fridge is stuffed with food is the same as saying there is a lot of food in this fridge. Francesca says, A, there's too much internet. There's too much internet. E, there's too much food in this fridge. Okay, thank you very much, Francesca. If you agree with Francesca, let me know. Let me know, by the way, if we say there's too much internet, is this a positive or is this a negative? It's important to think about that, because if this is a positive, then maybe. But if you think it's a negative, then this might sound a bit strange. Francesca says, do sentences D and E have the same meaning? No. Francesco, well done. Okay, and you've also said that A is negative. Okay, if it's negative, do you think this is something we would say? Just have a think about the internet side of things. There's too much internet. Let me have a little think about that one. Alida says D and E don't have the same meaning. Okay, both you and Francesca have got that question correct. Yes, sentences D and E do not have the same meaning. And that's very important. There's so much food in this fridge doesn't mean it's a negative. There's too much food in this fridge is, of course, a negative. So well done there for spotting that one. Let's see what you guys say about the rest of this. Have a really good think about A. Would you ever complain about there being too much internet? I suppose it depends on the context. We would probably say, like, you're on the internet too much. That's definitely possible. But if we're talking about the strength, if the context is the strength of the internet, the strength of Wi-Fi, is this something we're going to say? Personally, in my experience, I have my own personal opinion when it comes to this sort of thing. especially due to the difficulties on Monday, Tuesday, on Monday and Tuesday. Okay, I'll give you guys another minute and then I'll let you know the answers. Alida says CNG would native would say. Okay, C, the Wi-Fi strength is good, and you're saying G as well. This fridge is stuffed with food. Thank you very much, Alida. If anyone who's watching agrees with Alida, please let me know in the chat section. It's so important to take part in the chat section. That's where I can find out in terms of, that's where you guys can interact with me. So 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Okay, I'm going to go through each answer individually. A, no, this doesn't make sense to say that there's too much internet. No, you need a lot of. I don't know anyone who has ever complained about the Wi-Fi being strong, for example. If we want to use, if we're ever going to say the internet too much, you might say you've been on the internet too much. That's something we could say, but in this context, no. B. What did I put for B? There's much internet. No, definitely not. This is something that a native speaker would never say. C, the Wi-Fi strength is good. Yes. D, there's so much food. There's too much food in this fridge. Yes, D. Yes, a native would say this. E as well. Yes. A native speaker would say this. There's too many foods in the fridge. Of course, that's just wrong. That's bad English. So that's going to be a no. And finally, G. Yes, a native would say that. Good. Okay, so we now have a little look at that. Now let's think of. I just want to concentrate on much for one moment. I'm going to use much in a different way here. And again, I'd like you to think of which sentences would a native say. Now, you might come across some new ways of using much. Okay, let's have a little look. I'm just throwing in one or two things with many into the mix as well. Now, what you might be seeing here is the relationship between using much and the adjective and then a noun. What happens when we use an adjective? This is an interesting question, which we can look at which we can look at here, especially when it comes to comparisons. And you've got a few others here as well. So which sentences would a native say? The first one, A, it's a complicated situation and there's much to be said about it. B, we have much bigger problems. This, and then C, we have many bigger problems. This is an interesting one because of the rule of much and many, but we have to think about, does the adjective change which one we would use? Does the adjective even make a difference? D, we have many other problems. E, he was a much better president than the current one. Here we're using much as a comparison. And F, the much harder decision can often be the right one. The much harder decision can so often, soften. Sorry, let me just rewrite this last one. I've just written soften instead of so often. Yeah, the much harder decision can so often be the right one. I'm going to throw in one more, actually. Okay, I've thrown in this one again. It's the same sentence, except I've changed much and replaced much with a lot. Have a little think. Again, we're thinking of what the native would say. And this takes us away just from, you know, what you would learn at a basic elementary level in relation to countable and uncountable nouns. Because now we have to think about, well, the adjective, or the, in this case, in some cases, the comparison. Does the comparative adjective change the rule in any way? Does it make us think, wait a minute, do I still go with much, or do I go with many, or do I go with a lot? This is an interesting question. So this is then, again, this is not just what you should do, but it's also what natives do as well. So let's have a little think about this. Let me know in the live chat. If you think native, just say yes, and then say, for instance, A, B, and, you know, F, for example. And if it's a no, then just go, you know, something like C, D, F, whatever it might be. Okay, whatever the answers might be. So let's see what you guys come out with. Make sure, by the way, guys, to like the video, and don't forget there is a small, I'm going to include the video in the description below, a video that I posted on Friday, I think Thursday or Friday last week, about much and many. So I'm going to include that in the description below. Alida says A, B, D, E, and F. I'm guessing those are the native responses, sentences. So you're saying A, it's a complicated situation and there's much to be said about it. You're saying B, we have much bigger problems. You're saying D, we have many other problems. E, he was a much better president than this current one. And finally, F, the much harder decision can so often be the right one. If you agree with a leader, let me know. Come in the live chat section. Let me know what you think. Francesca says A, C, E, and F. Very similar answers. The only difference here is going to be C. Alejandra says A, B, and E. Okay, so some interesting answers here. Again, I'm going to go through each one. Okay, so here are the answers. Thank you very much for your contribution. Okay, so A, we have much, sorry, A is yes. A is yes. That's definitely a native kind of sentence. B, we have much bigger problems. Yes, this is correct. This is what a native would say, and this is correct. It's interesting. because you would say by the rules of grammar that you would have learned at elementary and pre-intermediate that when you have the plural, or if it's accountable, you use many, and that is true. But we now have an adjective. The rule suddenly no longer stays. We now have to change. If we add in an adjective, we're going to say, we're going to go with much. And this is an example. It's this, I can replace problems with another noun. Let's say we're talking about animals. I wouldn't say we have, could I say we have many bigger animals? Sorry, we have many bigger cats, for example. No, I would say we have many other cats, but if I'm going to go with the comparative, I'm going to go with the adjective. We have much bigger cats. So the adjective changes things, and it's the comparative adjective. So even if you have a plural, cats, dogs, whatever it might be, if you have a comparative, it's then going to be much, okay? So that's an interesting one. It's not something you would necessarily, you won't learn that at elementary, and you won't learn that at pre-intermediate. You learn that at a higher level, but it's important to know. It's a bit confusing. C, we have many bigger problems. No, this is not something that a native would say. We would say we have much bigger problems. We have many bigger problems. No, we just wouldn't say that. Like I said, the adjective, the comparative form changes things. D, we have many other problems. Yes, this is native. That's also the correct way of speaking. He was a much better president than this current one. Again, we've got the comparative, better. President is accountable because you can have presidents. But we're going to say he was a much better. And again, we've got the article as well. So it's going to have to be. So E, yes. We then have F, the much harder decision can so often be the right one. Here, another example, you've got the comparative. Decision is accountable, decisions, but this is correct. And G is obviously no. We just wouldn't say that. So here's another thing that we need to know. If you're going to use subject plus much plus comparative, okay, it's the comparative form, plus noun, even countable nouns, okay? So that is an important structure to know about. It doesn't matter if you're using a comparative, harder, stronger, bigger, better, and you're using a countable noun, you aren't going to go with many. You are going to go with much. Now, that's an important structure to know about. Okay, guys, thank you so much. I'm very pleased to say that the internet connection today has been good. I'm very happy with that. It means that I got this to work properly. I've got the studio light here. I've got my personal Wi-Fi. The next thing on the list is to improve the microphone quality. As always, guys, please make sure you like and share the video. Make sure you like the videos and interact in the comment section as well. A big thank you to Alejandra, Francesca, Alida, and Irina F for your contribution in the chat section as well. Now, I'm looking forward to the next short video that I'm going to upload. The next short, so this week, there will be in total 2 videos actually, because on Monday I uploaded one of used to. So there's another one that I'm going to upload this week, hopefully by Friday, and that's going to be one on the present perfect versus past simple. You too, guys. So take care, everybody. Thank you so much for watching. I'm glad that the internet worked well. Problem solved. Take care. And I'll see you guys tomorrow, same time, 4:30, with another daily live English lesson. Take care and bye for now. You too, guys. Yes, you too, Alida, and you too, Arina.